The colony world of Arden was a place of peace once. Its skies were wide and blue, its cities alive with laughter and light. Families had built homes there. Children had grown up without fear, and people believed they were safe at the edge of the stars. But all of that changed when the Vra'kul arrived. They came without warning. Their ships were dark and sharp, like knives cutting across the sky. The first attack lasted only minutes. Defense satellites fell like broken toys. The planetary shields shattered under the weight of weapons no one on Arden had ever seen. Cities burned before anyone could even understand what was happening. People screamed as buildings collapsed. Streets filled with smoke and fire. Families were torn apart as they tried to flee. The soldiers of Arden fought back, but their weapons were weak compared to the enemy's power. The Vra'kul were ruthless. They did not ask for surrender. They came only to destroy and to conquer. Soon the colony's skies were filled with black clouds of war. The Vra'kul's ships circled above like predators hunting prey. Every day more cities fell. Every night more fire spread across the horizon. In the bunkers below the ruined streets, families huddled together. Mothers whispered to their children, promising that somehow everything would be fine even when they knew it was a lie. The air was thick with fear, the silence broken only by distant explosions. The defenders tried to send messages for help. They used every channel, every beacon, every old relay station they could find. The signals went out into the dark, pleas for mercy, calls for aid, desperate cries from a dying world. But deep inside, they all knew the truth. No one would come. Arden was too far from the center of power. Too small, too unimportant. Other colonies had been attacked before and no one had moved to save them. Great empires cared only for themselves. Neighbors feared the Vra'kul too much to interfere. Even Earth, the homeworld of humanity, was far away. The galaxy still looked at Earth as young and fragile, too small to stand against powers like the Vra'kul. Many whispered that Earth would not risk war for one distant colony. And so, hope began to fade. Captain Saran, commander of Arden's defense forces, stood upon the wall of the last fortified city. His uniform was torn, his face shadowed with exhaustion, but his eyes were still sharp. Around him, soldiers waited, their armor scratched, their weapons running low on power. He looked at the horizon where black smoke curled into the sky. He could see the faint glow of the enemy's ships hovering, waiting to strike again. The air tasted of ash. He closed his eyes for a moment and let the weight of silence sink in. He thought of his family, hidden somewhere deep below the city. He thought of the soldiers who trusted him to lead. He thought of the children who would never see another day if they failed. He tightened his grip on his weapon. His voice was quiet but strong when he spoke to the men and women around him. We fight until we can no longer stand. Our families are behind us. This city is their shield. We will not let it fall without a fight. The soldiers straightened. They were tired, broken, and afraid. But his words gave them a spark of strength. Above them, the Vra'kul fleet moved like shadows. The defenders knew what was coming. The enemy would descend, the walls would shake, and this final city would be torn apart just like the others. But still, they stood ready, and deep within the hearts of the colonists hiding below, a fragile question whispered through the fear. What if someone came? What if Earth had not forgotten them? No one dared to say it aloud. No one dared to believe it. But the thought lingered, fragile and small, like a single candle burning in the dark. For now, Arden waited, and the silence of desperation hung heavy over the dying world. The walls of the final city shook as the Vra'kul cannons thundered in the distance. Dust fell from broken ceilings, and the ground trembled with each blast. Inside the fortress, Captain Saran stood tall, though his heart was heavy. He looked at the soldiers gathered around him. Their armor was scratched, their faces pale, and their eyes filled with exhaustion, yet not a single one turned away. They all knew this was the end. The Vra'kul had crushed every defense before them. Cities were ashes, villages reduced to rubble, and millions of lives already lost. Only this fortress city remained, and even its walls could not stand forever. The enemy was coming, and nothing could stop them. Saran's hand tightened on his weapon as he spoke to the soldiers. His voice was calm, even as his throat burned with grief. This is where we make our stand. Behind us are our families, our children, and the last hope of Arden. If we fall, they fall. If we stand, they may live one more day. His words carried across the silence. Some soldiers straightened their backs, some gripped their rifles tighter, and some closed their eyes as tears slid down their cheeks. They were ready to die, Not for glory, not for victory, but for love. Love for the people behind them. Outside the walls, the enemy gathered. The Vrokkel were tall and armored, their bodies wrapped in dark metal that gleamed under the fires of war. Their weapons glowed with a cold, merciless light. They marched without fear, without hesitation, like an endless tide of death. The skies above were filled with their ships. Dark, sharp vessels hung like vultures ready to strike again. They were so many that the stars themselves seemed to vanish behind their fleet. A soldier beside Saran whispered, "We cannot win this, Captain." Saran turned to him, his eyes steady. "We may not win, but we can fight. We can show them that Arden will not bow. Even if this city falls, the Vrokkel will remember that we made them bleed." The soldier nodded, his hands trembling, but a spark of courage lit within his eyes. The warning sirens wailed. The attack had begun. The first blast hit the wall, shaking it like thunder. Stones cracked, dust filled the air, and the soldiers braced themselves. Then came the sound of alien war cries, low, inhuman roars that chilled the blood. The Vrokkel charged forward, their boots pounding the earth, their weapons raised high. "Hold the line," Saran shouted. The defenders opened fire. Energy bolts and bullets streaked through the smoke, striking the armored giants. Some Vrokkel fell, crashing heavily into the dirt, but many more pushed forward. Their weapons spat beams of burning light, cutting through stone, tearing apart barricades, and sending soldiers flying. The ground battle became chaos. Explosions ripped through the front lines. Screams filled the air as men and women fell. The defenders fought bravely, but the enemy pressed harder with every second. From the walls, Saran watched the tide of destruction. His heart ached with every life lost, but he did not falter. He raised his weapon and fired again and again, shouting orders, pulling wounded soldiers to safety, standing tall where others might have fallen. Deep below the city, families listened to the battle above. Mothers held their children close, whispering prayers. Fathers gripped makeshift weapons, ready to defend the bunkers if the enemy broke through. Every explosion shook the ground, and every cry of pain tore at their hearts. They waited, terrified, powerless, clinging to the faintest thread of hope. But that hope was fading fast. As the Vrokkel forces pushed closer, Captain Saran felt the weight of despair pressing in. He knew reinforcements would never arrive. Arden was alone, yet even in that moment of darkness he stood straighter. He would not let fear be the last memory his soldiers carried. He would not let despair win. Arden will not fall quietly, he roared, raising his rifle high. "Fight for every breath, for every child, for every stone of this city." The soldiers answered with a cry of defiance. Their voices rose together, cutting through the thunder of war. It was not the shout of an army that expected victory. It was the voice of a people refusing to die forgotten. The wall shook again as the enemy pressed harder. The Vrokkel were endless, unstoppable, and yet above the smoke-filled sky something stirred. A ripple of light cut across the stars, so faint at first that no one noticed. But soon a shape began to form, vast, dark, and silent. Neither Saran nor his soldiers saw it yet. But far above, beyond the battlefield, the shadow of something powerful had arrived. And Arden's story was about to change. The battle raged on. The walls of Arden's last city shook with every strike from the Vrokkel. Soldiers fired until their rifles overheated, and still the enemy came. Their dark armored forms pushed through smoke and fire, unstoppable, merciless. Captain Saran wiped blood and dust from his face. His body ached, but his spirit would not break. He kept firing, kept shouting orders, kept pulling fallen soldiers to their feet. Yet in his heart he feared it was all in vain. Above, the skies were filled with enemy ships. Their sharp black silhouettes blotted out the stars. Every time Saran looked upward, it felt like staring into death itself. And then, it happened. A ripple of light cut across the heavens. At first it looked like a distortion, a strange flicker of energy. Many ignored it, thinking it was only the glare of weapons fire. But then the ripple widened, tearing space itself open. Out of the void, a colossal shape emerged. The battlefield fell into silence for a heartbeat. Both human and alien eyes turned to the sky. It was not a sleek alien vessel. It was not a fragile colonial transport. No, this was something else. Its hull was jagged and dark, built for war and nothing else. Armor plating thicker than anything Arden had ever seen gleamed faintly in the firelight. Cannons bristled along its sides, silent but menacing. The sensors of the city screamed to life, air alerts echoing through broken halls. An identification code flashed across every human console loud and clear. UNS Revenant. The soldiers froze. Some whispered the name in disbelief. Some wept openly. For years, stories had been told of Earth's most feared warship, the Revenant. It was said to have fought in the darkest wars of humanity, when survival itself was in doubt. It had turned battles when all hope was lost. It had earned names among the stars, the Ghost of Earth, the Cursed Blade, the Deadliest ship. But legends also said it was gone, lost to time, destroyed or hidden away. No one believed they would ever see it again, and yet, there it was, above Arden. Captain Saran's breath caught in his chest. For the first time since the invasion began, hope flared inside him. His voice cracked as he whispered, "It's real." The Vracul, too, saw the newcomer. At first they hesitated. Their fleet shifted uneasily as though sensing something dangerous. But then, confident in their numbers, they turned their weapons toward the single human ship. Dark beams of energy shot from the Vracul fleet, streaking toward the Revenant like lightning. Explosions lit the sky as the deadly barrage struck. But the Revenant did not fall. Its shields flared bright, a storm of energy wrapping its hull. It absorbed the fury, standing unshaken. For a long moment it remained silent, letting the enemy waste their fire. Then, slowly, its cannons turned. The first shot split the night. A beam of light erupted from the Revenant's side, tearing through an enemy cruiser as if it were paper. The alien ship exploded in a blossom of fire. Then another blast and another. Missiles streaked like thunderbolts. Railguns roared like the earth itself was angry. One by one, the Vracul ships fell. On the ground, the defenders stared upward in awe. Their mouths hung open, their weapons lowered. For weeks they had watched their skies darkened by enemy ships. Now for the first time they saw the invaders bleed. A young soldier dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "We're not alone," he whispered. "Earth came for us." Inside the bunkers, civilians hugged each other and wept. Mothers clutched children tighter, not in fear but in relief. Old men who had thought their days would end in silence lifted their heads and whispered prayers of gratitude. Captain Saran raised his rifle high. His voice carried across the walls, across the broken streets. "Look to the sky. The Revenant fights for us." A cheer rose, shaky at first, then stronger, louder, rolling across the city like thunder. For the first time since the invasion began, Arden dared to believe. Above, the Revenant moved like a predator among prey. The Vracul fleet faltered, their confidence cracking. The legends were true. Humanity's deadliest ship had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Vracul fleet unleashed everything they had. Their ships filled the heavens with burning light, beams of destruction pouring down like a storm. The sky above Arden became a sea of fire. Civilians hiding in bunkers trembled as the walls shook. Soldiers on the ground shielded their eyes, fearing the giant human warship would be torn apart. But the Revenant stood firm. Its shields flared bright, glowing blue and white, bending under the assault but never breaking. It seemed to drink in the fury of the Vracul. For long seconds, the alien fleet poured fire into the ship, believing they could overwhelm it. Yet when the light faded, the Revenant still hung in the sky, silent and unbroken, like a mountain standing against the storm. Then it answered. The first strike came from its railguns. The sound was deep and thunderous, a roar that seemed to shake the very air. Slugs of metal, accelerated to impossible speeds, tore through the void. One Vracul destroyer exploded instantly, its pieces scattering like sparks. Another was struck through the center, splitting in half as flames consumed it. Then came the missiles. Dozens launched at once, streaking across the black sky like falling stars. The Vracul tried to intercept, their defenses flaring to life, but the Revenant's weapons were too fast, too clever. The missiles broke through and struck their targets. Entire cruisers erupted into fireballs that lit the horizon. On the ground, soldiers and civilians watched in awe. For weeks they had seen their skies owned by the enemy. Now in a single moment, those same skies became a canvas of vengeance. A little boy hiding in the bunker whispered, "The sky is fighting for us." His mother held him tighter, tears streaming down her face. For the first time she felt hope. Above, the Revenant continued its assault. Its cannons fired in relentless rhythm, every shot precise, every strike deadly. It did not waste energy. It did not hesitate. It moved like a predator that had been waiting for this moment, finally unleashed. The Vracul fleet began to falter. Their formation broke apart as ship after ship was torn from the sky. Panic rippled through their ranks, a feeling they had never known when facing colonists. They had come expecting easy prey. Instead, they had found Earth's deadliest warship. Captain Saran stood upon the wall, his rifle forgotten in his hands. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched the impossible unfold. "They bleed," he whispered, hardly believing it. "The Vra'kul can bleed." The soldiers around him lifted their weapons and cheered, their voices ragged but fierce. They shouted not out of victory but out of defiance, out of sheer relief that the nightmare was not endless. "Fight," Saran roared, his voice breaking through the chaos. "The Revenant fights with us!" Push them back. Inspired, the defenders surged with new strength. They fired with fresh energy, their hearts no longer heavy with despair. Every blast from the Revenant above felt like a heartbeat echoing through their souls, but the Vra'kul did not retreat easily. Their ground troops still pressed hard, marching with relentless fury. Beams of energy ripped through stone, soldiers fell screaming, and blood stained the streets. The defenders fought back desperately, their courage now matched by hope. And still the Revenant rained fire from the skies. The alien flagship, larger than the rest, moved forward to challenge it. Its weapons glowed with deadly power, its hull bristling with strength. It was the pride of the Vra'kul fleet, a ship that had crushed entire colonies alone. But the Revenant turned toward it, slow and deliberate, like a predator locking onto its prey. A silence seemed to fall across the battlefield, broken only by the distant rumble of engines. Soldiers on both sides paused, their eyes lifting to the heavens. The deadliest ship of Earth faced the might of the Vra'kul, and Arden, broken and bleeding, watched as history was about to be written in fire. The sky above Arden burned with light. Explosions flared like suns as ships died one after another. The Revenant moved among them like a hunter, tearing the Vra'kul fleet apart piece by piece. But still the enemy flagship advanced, its massive frame glowing with power, its weapons charging for a final, devastating strike. Inside the fortress city, the defenders held their ground. The battle still raged across the streets. Vra'kul soldiers, tall and armored, stormed through the ruins, their weapons ripping through walls and barricades. Human soldiers fired back, their cries of defiance echoing across the broken city. Every corner was a fight for survival. Captain Saran stood on the wall, his eyes fixed on the heavens. His hands trembled not from fear but from the overwhelming weight of what he saw. Arden had been doomed only hours ago. Now the galaxy's deadliest ship fought above them. He whispered to himself as if afraid the dream might shatter. "It's real. It's truly real." Then a sound filled the comms, steady, calm, human. "This is Captain Elias Rain of the UNS Revenant." Every soldier froze. Every bunker fell silent. The voice carried across the battlefield, strong and unshaken, like steel in the dark. "Arden," the voice continued, "you are not alone. We heard your call. We have come to fight with you. Hold the line. We will break them." Tears welled in Saran's eyes. His throat tightened as he pressed his comm. "This is Captain Saran of Arden's defense. We thought no one would come. You fought when others would have fallen." Rain's voice replied, steady as a rock. "You stood when the galaxy turned away. Arden will not die today, not while the Revenant stands." The words struck like fire in the hearts of every listener. Soldiers on the walls lifted their weapons higher. Civilians in bunkers wept openly, clinging to each other as hope, real and living, filled their hearts again. Children whispered the ship's name, their eyes wide with wonder. In one underground shelter, a young girl tugged at her father's sleeve. "Papa," she asked softly, "does this mean we'll live?" The man, whose face had been hard with despair for days, knelt and hugged her close. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Yes, child. We will live. Earth has not forgotten us." Above, the Revenant surged forward. Its cannons unleashed a torrent of fire against the alien flagship. The clash shook the sky itself, two giants trading blows in a storm of energy and flame. On the ground, Arden's defenders fought with new strength. They shouted Rain's words as if they were a battle cry. "We are not alone." They roared as they pushed the Vra'kul back step by step. Their rifles spat fire, their blades cut deep, and their courage burned brighter than ever before. Saran himself led from the front, his weapon flashing in the smoke. Every time he thought he would fall, he remembered Rain's voice. He remembered that above them the Revenant was fighting too. He remembered that Earth had the Vra'kul, once so confident, now hesitated. Their formation broke. Their roars were no longer filled with certainty, but with anger and confusion. They had expected an easy victory, a swift conquest. Instead, they faced a people who refused to die and a warship that legends whispered about in fear. Siran raised his calm once more. His voice was ragged but strong. "Captain Rain, Arden stands ready. Whatever you need, we will fight with you." The reply was short, but it carried the weight of a promise. "Then fight, Captain. Together we will make the Vra'kul remember this day." The defenders roared in answer, and above them all the Revenant fought on, its guns blazing, its shadow vast and unyielding. The tide of battle was turning. For the first time in weeks, the people of Arden believed in tomorrow. The skies above Arden roared with fire. The UNS Revenant and the Vra'kul flagship clashed like gods of war, each strike lighting the heavens with fury. Explosions rippled through the night, painting the horizon with red and gold. Civilians huddled in bunkers felt the earth shake as if the planet itself trembled beneath their feet. Yet amidst the chaos, a new sound filled the air, the deep growl of engines, dropships. From the belly of the Revenant, dozens of dark vessels descended, their wings cutting through smoke and fire. They streaked down like falling stars, landing across the ruined city. The ground trembled as their heavy frames touched down. The hatches opened. Out poured Earth's Marines, armored soldiers in black and silver suits, their visors glowing faint blue, their weapons humming with deadly energy. They moved with perfect precision, every step measured, every motion practiced. These were not desperate defenders. These were warriors trained for the harshest battles humanity had ever faced. They opened fire. Their rifles spat streaks of light that cut through the armored Vra'kul like blades through paper. Grenades burst, scattering enemy formations. Where Arden's soldiers had struggled, the Marines carved a path with ease. Captain Siran saw them arrive, and for a moment, he could not breathe. His weary soldiers stared in awe as the Marines surged forward. Some of the colonists even dropped to their knees, overcome with relief. One Arden soldier whispered, voice shaking, Earth has come." Siran gripped his weapon tighter. His voice carried across the wall, fierce and unbroken. "With them we strike back. Forward!" His soldiers, fueled by new courage, charged alongside the Marines. For the first time in weeks, they were not retreating. They were advancing. The streets became a battlefield of fire and thunder. Human Marines and Arden defenders fought shoulder to shoulder, pushing the Vra'kul back street by street. Every intersection became a stand, every rooftop a vantage, every shadow a place where the invaders fell. Above, the Revenant faced the alien flagship. The Vra'kul ship was massive, bristling with weapons. It unleashed torrents of energy, each blast capable of splitting mountains. But the Revenant was relentless. Its shields flared, its cannons thundered, and its railguns roared. The duel was unlike anything the people of Arden had ever seen. The alien flagship loomed like a monster, but the Revenant struck like a blade, swift and merciless. Every shot was precise, every move filled with purpose. The flagship fired its main cannon. A beam of pure destruction streaked toward the Revenant, tearing space itself apart. For a heartbeat, the defenders on the ground held their breath, thinking it would end there. But the Revenant turned, its shields glowing bright, and the beam split across its armor. Fire rippled, but the ship endured. Then, with a roar of defiance, it unleashed a counterstrike. 3 railgun slugs and a swarm of missiles. They tore into the flagship's hull, fire blooming like suns across its surface. The ground shook with the impact. The sky itself seemed to burn. On the streets below, Siran fired his rifle, cutting down another Vra'kul soldier. He turned to see a group of Marines beside him. Their leader saluted briefly before pushing forward. Siran felt his chest tighten with pride. This was no longer just Arden's battle. Humanity itself stood with them. Everywhere the tide was turning, the Vra'kul, once so unstoppable, now stumbled. Their lines broke, their soldiers faltered, their ships fled. They had never faced resistance like this, never seen prey fight with such fury. And in that moment, Arden was no longer prey. The defenders roared as they pushed forward. Civilians in the bunkers could hear the battle cries, and tears filled their eyes. Hope was no longer a whisper. It was alive, burning bright in every heart. Above, the Revenant's guns thundered again, pounding the alien flagship. The mighty vessel groaned, its armor cracking, its engines failing. The invaders had thought Arden would die forgotten. But Earth's deadliest ship had come, and the Vra'kul were learning fear. The alien flagship burned in the sky like a dying star. Its massive frame broke apart piece by piece, explosions rippling across its surface. Great chunks of metal fell into the atmosphere, streaking like fiery comets before slamming into the wastelands outside the city. The people of Arden watched from shelters, rooftops, and ruined streets as the impossible unfolded. The monster that had cast its shadow over their world was dying. For the first time in weeks, they saw the stars again, not hidden by smoke but shining freely above. On the ground, silence fell for a brief moment. The Vra'kul soldiers, once feared as invincible, now staggered like cornered beasts. Their weapons shook in their hands, their alien eyes wide with something none thought they could feel. Fear. The Revenant gave no mercy. With one final thunderous strike, it launched a barrage of missiles and railgun fire. The flagship split apart, its core tearing free in a blinding explosion. A wave of light rolled across the battlefield, so bright that men and women shielded their eyes. When it cleared, the Vra'kul flagship was gone, scattered dust among the stars. Cheers erupted across Arden. Soldiers raised their weapons high. Colonists cried out in joy, and children clung to their parents with tears of relief. The nightmare was over. Captain Saran fell to his knees, his rifle slipping from his hand. He looked around at his weary, blood-stained soldiers. They were smiling. Some were crying. Others simply stared at the sky in disbelief. He whispered softly, his voice trembling. "We survived. We truly survived." Beside him, one of the Earth Marines placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. Through the glowing visor, Saran saw no face, but he felt the strength in that silent gesture. Humanity was united here. Arden and Earth, colony and homeworld, survivors and saviors. All across the planet, the retreat began. The surviving Vra'kul forces fled into the skies, their ships breaking formation and vanishing into warp. They had tasted Earth's wrath, and they wanted no more. The predators had learned they were not the only hunters in the galaxy. As the last of the enemy disappeared, the Revenant descended lower, hovering above the city. Its shadow was no longer a threat but a shield. For the colonists, it looked less like a warship and more like a guardian angel of steel. The bunkers opened. Families poured out into the open air, many for the first time in weeks. Children ran through the rubble, laughing even as their parents cried. Survivors embraced, their joy overwhelming their grief. The city was scarred, yes, but it still lived. Arden lived. Captain Saran stood on the city wall watching as the people emerged. His heart ached with pride. They had endured even when all hope was lost. Through the crackling comms, a voice from the Revenant spoke at last. Calm, steady, and filled with resolve. "People of Arden, you are not alone. Earth hears you." Earth answers, "We fight as one." The words spread like fire through every soldier, every colonist, every child. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed. Others shouted their joy to the heavens. It was a promise, a vow that no colony would ever again be left forgotten in the dark. Saran closed his eyes, letting the weight of the moment sink into him. He thought of the days of silence when no help came, when every hour felt like the end. And now the greatest ship of Earth had crossed the stars for them. "This is not the end," he whispered. "It is the beginning." Above, the Revenant slowly turned, its engines glowing against the night sky. It was a reminder to friend and foe alike. Humanity would never again be underestimated. The people of Arden raised their eyes to the stars, no longer with fear but with hope. For they knew that across the galaxy, others still suffered as they had. And when their cries for help rose, Earth would answer again. The legend of that night would never fade. It would be told in homes, in halls, in songs and stories, that when all seemed lost, when no help was thought to come, Earth's deadliest ship arrived, and with it came not just salvation, but the rebirth of hope for all humanity.